winning now, and I ain't never gonna back down.
Welcome to The Rise. I'm Roddy Jones, and I am pleased to be joined by a man who has about 1 million different titles, if we're going to be honest. Among them are entrepreneur, author, athlete, motivational speaker, one of the absolute best that you will find around, inspiration. I am pleased to welcome in former University of Tennessee football player and current just superstar, Inky Johnson. Inky, how are you, man?
Man, doing great, Roddy, man. It's an honor, true honor to be on with you, man. Thanks for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
The honor is certainly all mine. Because you've been through so much in your life, and I think the story so far, correct me if I'm wrong, but is how you have responded to the adversity that you've been dealt. So I want to go back to the moment when you were dealt a hand that no football player wants to be dealt. Take me back to September of 2006. What happened in that moment?
Absolutely. You know, Roddy, that day for me, man, I'm extremely thankful for it. That day taught me a lot, right? It taught me about the fragility of life. It taught me about how quickly things could change. It taught me about things happening and transpiring outside of our control. And so that game was against Air Force. 2 minutes left in the game, fourth quarter. And when we break the huddle, I'm thinking, you know, man, we're going to get the stop on these guys, close it out, get ready for Florida the next week. And, you know, play starts to unfold.
Trying to put one together here to tie this game up. Carney being blitzed, but he gets up, fires the ball down the sideline. It's complete down to the 32-yard line. Pass complete to Justin Hanley out of the backfield. Carney with a brilliant throw that time as he hit the wingback out of the backfield, coming down the near sideline, and then he was cracked out of bounds. The Tennessee defender is still down, and so now the crowd hushed as they stop the clock. 1:53 to go in the game, but our attention right now focused on Inky Johnson.
I see the quarterback release the ball, guy catches it, I roll up to make a routine tackle. And as soon as I hit him at the point of contact, it seemed as if every breath in my body left. My body goes completely limp. I hit the ground and I black out. Never experienced anything like that before. Been in a lot harder collisions. And I'll never forget when my eyes opened, my guys were saying, "Ink, get up, let's go, let's rock." And for the first time in my life, Roddy, I couldn't move, right? One of the scariest moments of my life. Like, I'm used to when things happen, right? I could pop right up, I could shake it off, get back going. And it was a shock going from the crown of my head to the bottom of my feet, and I couldn't feel anything. Right, and the shock eventually left my body, but it stayed in my right arm and hand. And I remember them bringing the spine board out.
And now they'll cart Inky Johnson off the field, and a rousing applause from the crowd here at Neyland Stadium.
They're wheeling me off the field. We get to the ambulance, and they just go through protocol, right? They say, we're going to get you over, run a couple tests, put you in a room, and they run their tests, and they put me in a room. And my mother comes in, kisses me, says a joke, cracks a joke, says a prayer, and she says, "Inky, you'll be fine. It's ball. Things happen." And when she goes to exit the room, I'll never forget, when she exits the room, she made a left. When she made the left, the doctor came running from the opposite side, and he was screaming. And he was saying, guys, we got to rush this kid back to emergency surgery. He's about to lose his life. He's about to die. And that's when I knew the moment was a lot realer than I thought it was, right? That's when I knew something pretty serious had happened, when I thought it was just a stinger or broken arm.
Well, you overcame that, obviously. You came through on the other side. And then I feel like your journey towards what you've become now started. Take me through the time from when you had the injury until you decided to go on this path of becoming one of the best motivational speakers in the world.
You know, I'll never forget when the doctor told me, he said, "We got to rush you back, and you busted your subclavian artery in your chest, your main artery. We got to take the main vein out of your left leg, plug it into your chest in order to save your life." He said, "Oh, I guarantee you won't be alive in the morning. You'll bleed out." And when I woke up, I had 6 cuts down my left thigh, 1 cut across the left side of my neck, 1 across the right, twice through my right ribs, cut out my right pec, bottom of my armpit to the bottom of my hand, 350 staples in my body, and they had bandaged me from my neck to my knees. Because when they went in to repair the artery, they noticed I had torn the nerves in my brachial plexus, which were the nerve roots that go from my spine that control shoulder, arm, hand, fingers. I had ruptured them. They said, think about it as if you're plugging something into a wall, but once you take it out, they can't go back in. That's how the brachial plexus goes into the spine. And the moment was so tough and heavy for me, I couldn't focus or forecast too far out, right? And so it made me very present in the present. But I would say for about shortly north of 2 years, Roddy, if I could be honest with you, I was just surviving, man. And it wasn't until I had my breakdown moment, right? To where I was in the football complex and I just broke down and I needed it. I cried, I released it. And it was the moment to where I really came to the realization that, hey man, this thing is over with for you. Like, it's time to hang it up, Ink. It's time to find something else, right? And that is when I transitioned into my career of service, right? We call it public speaking in the world, but I look at it as my service, my real work of what I've been put on this earth to do.
Coming up on The Rise with Inky Johnson.
And people kept saying to me, like, your career is probably done, like you can't play. I was like, it's not about a game.
Now back to The Rise, Inky Johnson. You talked about being a survivor, and your circumstances growing up would certainly give credence to that and be evidence of that you've been surviving your entire life. Grew up in Kirkwood, East Atlanta, 14 of you living in a 2-bedroom house. Take me back to those days. What was it like growing up, and how did that provide the fuel to help you excel?
You know, a lot of people think like 2-bedroom, 14 people, like what's that like, right? But it was awesome, man. My childhood, I loved it, right? Because I got to grow up around my cousins, right? Around my uncles, my aunts. Like, it was a lot of people in that 2-bedroom home. And it taught me gratitude, right? It taught me work ethic, right? It taught me just the results of your decisions and your choices. Watching my mother, right? As she had me going to work at Wendy's, a double shift, and watching her never make an excuse, which led to me, when I did something, I couldn't make an excuse, right? Because my mother, she always taught me, man, it's honor in working for something. But also, man, it instilled in me a fire, Roddy. Like, I wanted to change my family's circumstance, right? I wanted me and my cousins to have our own beds, right? We slept on pallets on the floor, and that was cool, and we would joke, and we would have our fun. But I felt like I can get us in a position to where one day we can have our own beds. I wanted my grandmother to have a better living condition. I wanted my mother to have a better living condition. And so every time I competed and every time I did something, it was at the front of my mind for sure that I wanted to change my family situation.
The outlook is tremendous, man. People would describe what you're describing as adverse circumstances from the very beginning. How did that inform how you see and inspire people to tackle adversity now?
Coming up the way I came up, growing up the way I grew up, right, it introduced me to adversity and opposition very early.
I'm gonna show you the little alleyway where I saw the guy shooting the drugs. You used to have a goal, one of the little rollaway goals, and all the guys just come in the neighborhood. And we used to always be out here playing basketball, and one day I was sitting out, I was playing by myself, and that's when the ball rolled, and I chased it down here. You know, I couldn't see the guy from when I was coming down because of, it goes back up in there, and he's shooting dope up his arm. And I saw it, and it just stunned me. I looked at him, and it made me realize, you know, I never want to do that, man, because that guy just looked hopeless, no good.
And my family taught me how to navigate it, right? Coaches taught me how to navigate it. And so when I encountered my injury, my brachial plexus avulsion, and my career ended, was it easy? Not by any stretch. But it was certain tools I already had in the toolkit to help me deal with it, right? From perspective to attitude to understanding what I could control about this moment. And so that was the benefit of coming up and growing up the way I grew up when I encountered adversity and opposition down the line.
I've heard you speak about how your preparation in football prepared you to deal with that adversity as well.
Absolutely.
What type of lessons in football did you take? What type of lessons did you take from football to not only help you deal with your injury, but to help you excel in the path that you decided after?
Yeah, man, I think football is an incredible sport, man. It teaches you so many life lessons along the way. I think one being a part of something that's a lot greater than any individual, right? Like, you know what the game brings, right? You're interconnected, right? Why you do what you do, it serves a greater purpose and mission than just yourself. I love when one of my guys got ready to tap out or quit, and I can go to him and say, hey, brother, rip my passion until you get strong enough to possess your own. And they would do the same for me. right? It taught me vital lessons along the way. And so even when I was in the hospital, I was supposed to be in the hospital 60 to 80 days. I got out of the hospital on the 3rd day, right? And I wanted to go right back to the football complex. And people kept saying to me, like, you can't play, just chill, man. Your career is probably done. Like, you can't play. I was like, it's not about a game, right? I needed to be back in that ecosystem. I needed to be back around my guys, right? Because that did something for me. And so the things that football and sports in general teaches you are things that you can correlate and translate over into everyday life. And I feel like it benefits people in phenomenal ways. And it benefited me in a phenomenal way.
That's so true, man. I want to go back to the early days of your football playing days. Who was it that signed you up for football at that time?
Trey Hurst, man. Trey Hurst, my guy. You know, he's a coach, and he changed my life, man. You know, I met him in my neighborhood, right? He was dropping a kid off, and he just stopped, got out of his truck. He ended up signing me and my cousins up to play ball, and I'll never forget, man, the first time I saw him at my school. I couldn't believe it, right? I was doing some things at school, right, acting up a little bit, and he showed up, right? And he was like, your mom told me. I was like, man, what you doing here, right? But this was also the guy, after I got injured, he was up in Tennessee, right? He came to check on me, right? This was also the guy when me and my family faced opposition. Now, house got broken into when I was a kid, that my mother called, right? Because our shoes got stolen. The one pair of shoes that I did have, she called him, and he showed up. And so just the impact of youth league coaches and what he did for my life personally, I'm forever indebted to him, man. That park, like Tucker Rec, the Lions, like that's my squad, man. As you know, what they produce, but that's one of the most pivotal moments and times in my life as a young man.
More with the inspiring Inky Johnson after this.
I was right-hand dominant. I had to learn how to write with my left hand all over again. It was a big deal.
Welcome back to The Rise with Inky Johnson. As a football player, you feared nothing. I mean, when you showed up at Tennessee, I believe I have this right, 5'9", 153 pounds. And then eventually at your peak, you're bench pressing over 300 pounds. Like,
Yes, sir.
where did that work ethic, where did that passion come from? Because it's so evident that it's still there in what you do now.
Of course, I wasn't coming from a real strength and conditioning program at my high school, right? We did what we could, but I wasn't coming from that place. And so I always felt like even when I was competing in high school, I was behind the 8 ball a little bit. I never felt like I had the level playing field. And so that's why I played so hard. And so when I got to Tennessee, we start doing our testing. And so guys are talking trash, and we get on the squat rack one day, and I'm scrawny, man. I'm like 153 soaking wet. I'm scrawny. And so we start doing this deal called pound for pound. And so all the guys are lifting, like running backs, safeties, right? O-line, linebackers. And so I get up under the rack, Roddy, and I go down, and I kid you not, this thing almost broke my back, right? My knees start shaking, bro. I fall, right? They have to pull the weight off me, right? And so I'm talking about, they're clowning me. I remember how that made me feel, right? We joked about it, but I remember how it made me feel, right? And so I very seldomly went home. I stayed there, and I worked my tail off, man. And so when I came into the summer heading into my junior year, I got the John Stuckey Lifter of the Year award on our team, right? It didn't happen until 2 years later, but I got him. I walked him down because I just wanted to be better, and I wanted to put myself in a position to be the best possible teammate, and I knew I had to work in order to do that.
Your Tennessee career obviously blossomed. I want to take a little step back, though. How'd you get to Tennessee? Because I know through the park through which you came up, not a lot of Tennessee fans in that park. A lot of Georgia fans in that park.
Oh, that Georgia, heavy. Georgia,
all the way.
Heavy.
So how'd you end up at Tennessee?
We got this coach, man, this offensive coordinator from Douglas High School. And one of the first phone calls he made was to me. Now, I'll never forget, man, he was Jamal Lewis's high school coach.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, Jamal Lewis played at Tennessee. And so I'll never forget, he sat me down in his office one day, and he said, Ink, man, this is what I can promise you. If you come out and you give me everything you got and you do what you got to do, he said, I'm going to do what I got to do, and I'm going to handle my business on the back end, and I'm going to go to bat for you. He said, I'll create a tape. I'll send it out to every coach in the country. coaches started coming to see me. Coach Rick came to see me. Coach Sylvester Kroon came to see me. A lot of guys came to see me. And Former came to see me, and I had some academic issues at the time. When he got up in the office, all the other coaches would be like, Ink, we might have to put together a plan if you don't qualify, maybe Hargrave, military, maybe JUCO, and then we'll get you on campus. And I'll never forget, Former was like, hey, man, I believe in you. He said, I got your word. I'll see you in the summer, right? I was like, yes, sir. I'll see you in the summer. And I was like, that's my type of guy, right? He didn't say Hargrave or JUCO. He's like, no, I believe in you. You're going to handle your business. He's like, I'm trusting you, man. You're going to do what you got to do, right? Rick called me after I committed. Rick called me and was like, hey, what's up, man? What you doing? And I was like, Coach, I gotta secure it, man. Like, I got to secure my future, man. I got to make sure I got a shot.
You were the first of your immediate family to go to college. You ended up with not only your degree, but also your master's. What did it mean to you to break that cycle of not being able to go to college, especially with the background, as you said, of the blind spots you had academically in high school?
Graduating college, you know, twice was a big deal to me, man, because, you know, in my family, there were certain limitations. It was almost as if it was built-in limitations. I was on track to graduate in 3 years at the time, and I still did it. That meant a lot to me, right? I think even that happening and transpiring, in spite of my injury, sent a stronger message to my family than just me graduating, right? Because I was right-hand dominant. I had to learn how to write with my left hand all over again. And I still did it. Then I went back and I got my master's. It was a big deal, right? I broke that generational curse in my family. It meant a lot, man, even for my mother. My mom didn't go to college, right? But both of her kids, me and my little sister, both of us ended up going to college and graduate. And I always attest that to the sacrifices of my mom and watching her work ethic. And I took that same spirit up to the University of Tennessee to finish what I started.
Next on the rise, Inky Johnson.
In those moments, it shows you the fragility of life, and it makes everyone extremely grateful.
Now back to the rise, Inky Johnson. When we talk about your journey, I think a lot of what's overlooked and how you've gotten to where you are is the process after your injury, after college, getting into public speaking. When did you decide, hey, I'm going to try and go into public speaking or public service, as you mentioned?
I would say shortly after 2 years after my injury happened, I was doing a lot of community service work because a lot of people helped me and my family coming up. And so it was something that was near and dear to my heart. And whenever I would go out, you know, it would be like an informal Q&A would strike up just about my arm. Somebody would come over, hey, man, what happened? Afterwards, people would always be like, man, you might need to speak. And I was like, nah, I'm cool on that. And I remember, Roddy, everything I tried to do, from teaching to working at a rec center to coaching, like everything I tried to do, it just didn't work, right? And I'll never forget, man, like just praying and being like, God, like, if this is it, like, reveal it to me. Like, make the path clear. I'll be obedient. I got a speaking engagement in Mississippi, and I got the exact same feeling that I used to get right when I would be in the tunnel, getting ready to run out in the kneeling. And I was like, this is it. And it was like confirmation for me. And from that point, it started, man, and I've been doing it coming up on 16 years ever since.
Because I know the moment that you get it, the moment that you figure out this game has nothing to do with skill and it's about will, won't nobody beat you. Won't nobody want it better than you. And so my question for you all tonight is, what is your appetite for winning? How bad do you want it? Because if you want it better than the other man, you will get it. You will be willing to do whatever it takes. You will be willing to go through the pain. You will be willing to go through the opposition and the adversity to get what you want. Because the thing about it, in your mind, this game is already won. And so now all you have to do is go down those steps and execute. The work has already been put in. Now all it is a dogfight. That's all it is. And so at the end of this game, when it's 4 zeros on that clock, who won it the most? That's all it boils down to. And if you want it better than them, there is no way that they can come out on your field, in your backyard. This is your house. That's your house. That's your backyard. Nobody get out of your backyard alive. Let's go. Let's go.
It's been a good day, man. Having fun, serving, you know, and trying to be a blessing.
Before we get out of here, I do want to circle back to football for just a second, because you faced a situation where you were in a fight for your life due to an injury on the football field. a situation that very few people have been in, but Damar Hamlin was recently in. I wonder, how did you process what was going on with him, having been in your own similar situation?
Man, I'm so grateful that he's still with us. Like, that was the first thing that I just thought about, right? Because when I look at a situation like that, from going through a situation like I went through, you think about it, big picture. And I'm thankful that the medical staff was there because I remember the medical staff was there for me, right? And so having those people around and seeing how they responded to Damar was phenomenal. But also, man, just understanding a little bit in terms of that family component. Like my mother, my father, I remember the look on their faces. I remember what it did for them. And so even when I was just praying, I was praying for his family, praying for him, praying for the physicians, and just the teammates, right? Like how it affects and impacts those guys, seeing that, right? Like the world stops for a moment. And I think in those moments, it shows you the fragility of life, and it makes everyone extremely thankful and grateful. But also, I remember when my injury happened, and I remember the guy from Air Force calling me that I had the collision with. And I remember speaking to him. Never forget him crying, saying, I'm sorry. And I was like, bro, it's all good, man. I was like, I appreciate your gesture, man. That's nice of you. And so even with Damar, right, I thought about T, right? I prayed for T. Higgins that was in a collision with Damar. And so it's always a lot of components, outside of the hit that gets affected. But I'm so grateful and thankful, man, that the pieces to the puzzle was there and he has the chance to recover. I'm just so grateful, man, that he's still present with us. But it sent a lot of emotions down my spine, man, when I saw that. Because I don't like to see guys get injured at all. Like if a guy gets injured when I'm watching a game, I can't watch the replay. Like I never watch a replay. I just can't because of what happened to me. And so, man, I'm extremely grateful, man, he's here with us.
Well, Inky, look, man, this has been an absolute pleasure. Certainly one of my favorites that we've ever done of these. You are an absolute legend. Continue to inspire. Really appreciate you spending time with me today.
Man, I appreciate you, man. Think the world love you, bro. And thanks so much for this opportunity, man. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tennessee legend, Inky Johnson. Be sure to check in for more Rise episodes and other original programming and memorable games on Origin Sports. I'm Roddy Jones. Thanks for joining us.